Hey, Abe, thanks for waiting. You are the last caller. You're in New Jersey, and you're on with Matt and Don.
Hey, guys. How is everything?
A mess.
Well, I don't know. I just saw you're destroying her over there. It's funny.
What have you got for us today?
Well, let me first say that I'm a Muslim, and I have to say that I've been listening to your guys' show recently for quite some time, and it's very interesting. And I think that you bring a lot of good points, and I've been considering your viewpoints for quite some time.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah. So basically, what I want to present, I want to present this argument that a lot of Muslims they present this kind of argument, and it just there's just something particularly strange about it. It's just it's strangely convincing, but I don't know if it should be convincing.
Okay,
but
that's good because it sounds like your bullshit detector is going off. So let's hear it and let's tear it apart.
Okay. Yeah. So basically the first part of this is that in the Quran, the Quran presents a literary and linguistic challenge to humanity. So basically, in the first chapter of the Quran, it presents this challenge. It says that if you doubt that this book was written by God, then produce something like it. And that's supposed to mean not as a subjective literary judgment, but more produce something that's even of similar quality in terms of literary merit.
Okay, we can stop there. We can stop there. That's a fallacy. That something is true until it's shown to be false. So the uniqueness of the Quran, which every book is unique, except for copies of the book, but Christians use the same thing. They talk about the uniqueness of the Bible, the uniqueness of prophecy, the uniqueness of what Jesus supposedly fulfilled, etc. Muslims do the same thing with the Quran. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how unique it is. It doesn't matter whether somebody could produce something remotely similar. That is not a testimony to the truth of the claims within the book, period.
Yeah, so no, I understand what you're saying. So I guess what Muslims are trying to say, they're trying to say that it's inimitable in the sense that
I don't care.
It could not have been written.
That's not relevant. The fact that you couldn't, first of all, I'm not conceding that it's true. I'm saying even if it were true, that doesn't change whether or not this is a book that speaks on behalf of God.
Uh-huh. So what they're trying to say is, because I've heard this argument from a couple of, I guess, Muslim apologists,
Mm-hmm.
and what they're trying to say is basically not
they're trying to say that the only way this book could be unique is if it actually comes from God. That is a bald assertion that they do not demonstrate, that they cannot demonstrate at all.
Mm-hmm.
They are snowing you. They are buffaloing you. They are bullshitting you. They've bullshitted themselves. They're saying this book is so clearly and obviously important that it must have come from God. No man could produce this book. While simultaneously acknowledging that a man actually, dictated and wrote the book. But they do it with, this is with the guidance of Allah. And no man on its own could produce this, which I don't accept is actually true, but I don't care. Because even if it were true that nobody else could produce this other than the individual who did, that doesn't mean that he could only produce it because he was communicating with God. Because that's what's happening over and over. And what they're essentially doing is saying, we're convinced that this could only come about from a God, and we will remain convinced until you prove that something like this could come about from something other than God. Here's the problem. You can say that about the Quran. You can say that about the Bible. You can say that about the Bhagavad Gita. You can say that about the Urantia stuff. You can say that about Nostradamus' writings. You can say that about anybody and any writing.
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Yeah. No, you could say that about a numeracy, John Allen Paulus's book that I recommend all the time. You could say nobody but John Allen Paulus, with the guidance of a God, could have produced a book like a numeracy. And even if there were no way to demonstrate that was wrong, that does not prove that God was involved.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to shift the burden of proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is prove me wrong. And if you've set up an unfalsifiable scenario, the easiest thing you can ever do is say, I'm going to believe until you prove me wrong. And you'll never be proved wrong because you have an unfalsifiable claim. If there's no way to falsify it, it's not a claim worth considering.
Yeah, so that makes sense. I guess, like, the way I think about it is that you have this book, and there had to have been some agent who wrote this book, right? You have a book, there needs to be an explanation for who wrote it, right?
Usually books have authors, yeah.
Yeah, so it has to have an author. So what they're trying to say is that a person could not have written the book.
Okay, prove it.
Whatever, they claim.
If they are claiming it is impossible for a person to write this book without God, they need to actually demonstrate that. It's not up to you to disprove it. You're buying into the thing that they're doing where they're shifting the burden of proof.
So what I was trying to do is I wasn't trying to say, like, oh, you have to disprove it. I was trying to say,
That's what they're
like,
saying.
They like show all these, like, quotes. They give all these quotes from like linguistic scholars or whatever, and they say, oh, these quotes they consist of, like, scholars saying, oh, in terms of linguistic merit, like, the Quran is very good or whatever, and it's just like, okay, so that doesn't necessarily mean that it's from God, but you have,
and it doesn't mean it's true.
You have to have some, but you have to have some. You have to, like, there needs to be a best explanation, and you have to rule out other explanations.
Yeah,
like,
but the problem here is that while there is an explanation, that doesn't mean anybody necessarily has access to it at any given point.
Yeah.
And it has no bearing on whether the book is true, right? I mean, literary criticism, that's pretty weak evidence in my mind.
Like, literary, like, judgment is not, like, it's not very objective,
right?
In its basis.
Right.
So I just, that's why I was like, it just, like, it didn't seem right a little bit, you know. So
yeah. I would demand better evidence, right? Because that's pretty poor evidence.
Because, like, I never really, like, heard a response from, like, atheists, like, to this kind of argument. Like, I've heard, like, responses to, like, you know, the Quran being kind of scientific miracles.
It's kind of a weak tea argument. We roll our eyes at that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, so I pulled up kind of like random Quran stuff. And of course it's in English. So all the Muslims that are getting ready to send me hate mail for saying I didn't get it right, tough. I'm going with what I have access to.
Right, you got to read it in Arabic, man.
So those who disbelieve will be burned in the fire. That's 3:116. I could have written that. Anybody attempting to, that's very, very similar to what's written in the Bible. So clearly we can find individual verses that don't seem remarkable at all. As a matter of fact, they seem like the same manipulative bullshit that's in every other religion where you're trying to threaten somebody into actually believing in worship. So I found at least one verse that clearly anybody without any decent moral compass and with a desire to encourage people to believe them without evidence could certainly write something like that. I need to know from the Muslims exactly which verses do they think could have only been written with the guidance of a God. Because I don't buy that. But even if they're convinced of it, that still doesn't prove that there's a God. And the big question is, where the fuck is Allah? Why do I have to read what his prophet told me? Why can't he interact with us? When it comes to Christianity, if a Damascus Road experience is good enough for Saul, then it should be good enough for everybody. And when it comes to Islam, if Allah has a message for me, he can come give it to me himself.
Yeah.
He's all powerful, right?
I'm waiting.
Yeah, and also,
not for you, for Allah.
Yeah.
For the other garbage concept that's been shoved down people's throats to manipulate everything for millennia. Well, not millennia, 700 years.
Yeah, No, I agree. I think
I'd also argue that if there was a God that was going to inspire a book where it was clear that only God could have inspired this book, maybe he should have picked a prophet that wasn't into little girls.
Okay, we don't need to go there.
Yes, we do. No. This is the obvious thing. So in Christianity, when God's going to destroy the world, who does he pick to save, to be the progenitor of everybody else who's going to exist? Noah, a drunk, a miserable drunk who curses one of his sons to be slaves of the others, the descendants of him. When Allah needs a prophet, who does he pick? Somebody who's okay with marrying a 9-year-old.
Well, I have a bigger issue with him, saying, "Hey, my friend here, I like your wife quite a bit. You should give her to me."
Yeah, no. That's the thing that's always coming up. I have yet to hear any message from any God ever, but I keep hearing from the chosen representatives of that God, and they are all pieces of shit. Every fucking one of them have moral failings and character flaws that are beyond what we would accept as tolerable. If I have an important message for everybody, you will get it from me, guaranteed until the day that I'm dead. I don't need a prophet. I don't need somebody to come and be my representative. And if I had to pick someone, like if I'm laid up in the hospital and I had an important message to deliver on the show, I would certainly not pick a monumental piece of shit. On that note, we got to let you go. I appreciate the time. Hopefully that helped out.